I'm going to tell you a secret. It's a big secret, and it isn't necessarily going to help me or my company, but frankly, I think you ought to know it. This is Scott McDonald of DrDemographics.com with the perfect place to put a practice podcast. Now, I'm going to state right off, I figure you can handle the truth. This may not particularly be a truth that is going to help people who sell demographics. However, we have to be honest with you. I think it's about time that someone explained a fundamental fact about demographics in dentistry. Now, I have read many books and articles on dental demographics throughout the past 35 years, and to be honest with you, I've even written a few myself. There is a consensus that favorable demographics will shield you from failure or risk. The truth is, it really won't. Granted, knowing the demographics of a particular area will be extremely helpful in giving you a chance to resist failure and to mitigate risk. But it's not a shield. Understanding who is out there, including your competitors and referral sources, is frankly important. And I'm certainly not saying that you don't need to know it. Or if a neighborhood is growing or a community is changing, shrinking, getting worse, that is true. But there's a huge mitigating factor that gets ignored by demographic companies who rely heavily upon scores or competition calculations. We could call it the human factor. Now trust me, I know demographics and I can witness for you just how weak these numbers can be in predicting success, especially if they're going to ignore what I call the human factor. Never forget, dentistry is a business of people. It is not a profession of materials, techniques, equipment, or even procedures. The success of your practice and the future of your profession relies almost entirely upon human factors. Now, let me explain what I mean by this so, there won't be any misunderstanding. I don't care how fantastic a location's statistics are, meaning regardless of the competition ratio, compensation rates, growth or decline, or riches or poverty. I don't care how well the dentist scored in the state board examinations. I don't care about their study club affiliations or even his or her membership with postgraduate programs of clinical excellence. Don't care. I don't care because it doesn't matter. Yeah, overhead counts, talented staff counts, but there is a human factor that is far more important that can be summarized in 2 words: personality and attitude. Every other fact about the doctor's skills, the location, equipment, and clinical abilities can be thrown out if they have a poor personality or a lousy attitude about their business. They do not have the same bearing upon the success of a practice as the interpersonal human skills of the doctor. Now, please don't misunderstand. Not all people skills are as valued in all parts of the United States in quite the same way. In other words, there are some differences. A doctor in Central Florida and another in Seattle may need a special attitude about their patients and community that will be unique to whom they're serving. That's okay. I might not have thought that when I was a young man starting my career in Los Angeles, but having lived in New York City, there is a flavor or a shading that will make thriving much easier if understood. In other words, in New York, you got to have a New York attitude. Same thing in New Jersey. And it's not as though people are really that different in various parts of the U.S., but it is undeniable that doctors have to fit their environment to be happy and to thrive and to be credible. Still, there are universal truths of people skills that transcend regional differences. A charming person is a charming person. A good listener is a good listener no matter where they are. True, a sense of humor may be manifested in different ways, but the ability to laugh at yourself, to appreciate children and teens who they are, in fact, need a little warm acceptance of older adults. And in fact, older adults themselves need a little special attention. The other side, or the dark side of this truth, is that there are some dentists who are just unhappy and seem anxious to share their frustrations with others. And people point to them and say, "We're doomed." They act entitled or dissatisfied with everyone and everything, no matter what happens. The glass is not half empty or half full. They want to know who stole their water. Is it any wonder that they can't keep good staff regardless of how much they pay them? So often, these shortcomings are reflected in their other interpersonal relationships. Children, spouses, friends, and relatives will cross the street just to avoid interacting with them because they're so unhappy. I'm trying to be honest and helpful. The doctor's positive personality and attitude will make a crap hole office, well, really wonderful and productive. I've seen this. Now here's the point. No other advantage in location will overcome a bad personality or a crappy attitude. In my upcoming book on where to put a practice, I do discuss this. So let me quote from it for a minute. The truth of all this was summed up in two cases of doctors. One was an older professional who was kind and as loving as a person could be. He remembered the names of his patients, pets, and children. He knew their hobbies. In every way, he presented the caring that every patient wishes their doctor possessed. Unfortunately, he was grossly incompetent. Prescriptions were wrong, dosages were naive, and diagnosis was way off. But all was forgiven because he met the expectations of his patients. They love the guy. He was brought to our attention by a doctor who purchased his practice and began to consider the cases that he had inherited. Now please note, not a single peer review complaint had ever been lodged against Dr. Nice at any time during his lengthy career. The new doctor was appalled at the liability he had undertaken with the purchase of this office. After all, the patients were his. Now, I suppose it's possible that his patients would have been more critical of this older doctor if his location had been difficult to reach or the office was ugly, but as it was, he was convenient in every important way. Now let's take another illustration of the opposite effect by another professional I knew. In this case, he was a general dentist. His peer review file was thick with complaints. It was odd because he was a fine clinician. And I'm basing this on the peer review committees that reviewed his work. And they looked at his diagnosis and his treatment, so I think they knew what they were doing. His office decor was in fact stunning. Everyone considered him above average on the treatment side of the practice. In fact, he was described as a stickler on making sure that the details were considered and research had been done in every case. But he had a unique ability to offend almost everyone he ever met. He was thoroughly unlikable. Dogs would seem to go out of their way to bark at him. Lawyers would inexplicably salivate whenever he entered the room. He had the problem of offending everyone's expectations. These were the popular polar opposites in personality and attitude. And you know what? In neither case did the demographics of their offices really do anything to help or to hurt their efforts. That's the truth. Now let me shift our discussion for just a minute to review the issue of demographics versus psychographics. Now I'm aware that most people understand that demographics involves the study of the facts about people and places. The income, age, competition, growth, occupation, housing type, and all that help factually describe the viability of an office. Believe me, I get it. And it is entirely factual. Unfortunately, it is helplessly naive when it comes to understanding how to make a practice succeed, or at least to predict its success. In the past, we've been quite vocal about the fallacy of the generic dentist and the generic practice. It's been demonstrated many times that two offices may be located right next door to each other. One will thrive while the other will struggle. As I suggested before, the attitude and personality of the dentist makes a huge difference. In these cases, the demographics may be identical. But the other difference has to do with the psychographics of the patient base. Now, by way of review, Psychographics divides the population near an office into its component lifestyles. It is more than facts about the people. It is a way of looking at their values, their desires, their expectations, and motivations, specifically about dentistry. What do they read? What do they watch on television? What do they do for a living? Sometimes referred to as market segmentation, it's a more nuanced way of evaluating how well the practice will fit the neighborhood and what to do to get people's attention and to attract them. Now, I can even tell you what clinical services will be most in demand based upon psychographics. Now, frankly, this is a level of evaluation you won't get from a real estate demographic database, or in fact, even from the Census Bureau data. And that is because it comes from several data sources and requires some pretty sophisticated analysis. I mention all this because it goes back to the basic premise that dentistry is a people business. And in the end, the more you know about people, the better off you're going to be. This is Scott McDonald. I want to thank you for watching. Please visit us at DrDemographics.com, and if we can do a little psychographics for you, we include it with every report we generate. And thanks again. Take care.